Okay, so we are entering into the time jump, and this is the predictions video for what we think is going to happen over the time jump and into the beginning of next season. So this video is for players who already are playing the game and know what's happened in the plot. I posted a bunch of plot videos already, so if you want to look into those, you can check those out and see what's happening in the plot so far. If you haven't watched those yet, I recommend that you do. They'll fill you in on what's happening for all this. Makes a lot more sense. So this video helps you with knowing what to do with your time jumps, what your goals are for your time jumps, what kind of political actions you want to take, and what you want to influence. Basically, you get a chance to kind of change the political map, take out evil groups or dangerous opponents. Basically try to change the story in a positive way, any way you can. And so you get a chance to do that with your time jumps, and you can put your resources wherever you want before your characters retire, or if they're not retiring, they still get to take action on things. So this is just a projection. So this tells you where where things are going currently, and that means that you'll get to make your choices based off of what we think is going to happen, and these are the things you get to influence. Ideally, if you choose well and you put a lot of points towards things that you want to not happen, that projection doesn't end up panning out. I mean, something looks like if it looks like a particular country is going to be destroyed over the time jump, you can put tons of points towards keeping that country alive. And the opposite is true too. If it looks like a country is maybe, going to be destroyed, and you're trying to help, it's an evil country, you could put a bunch of points towards really getting that thing destroyed. First of all, the time frame. Time frame wise, it's not a very long time jump. I won't tell you exactly how many years, but it's definitely a teen number. And so, it gives you a sense of the range, and probably somewhere in the middle of that range is most where we're projecting. Time is going by at about 1 year a day, maybe a little less actually. So it may be as little as 1 year every 2 days. So or 6 months a day. So that's pretty slow, and that means that as we do time jump days, it's not going to be a really long time jump. Pretty short. The crown and Free Republics looks to be really struggling in this time jump. They're structurally seem to be trying to hold together, and they're politically and economically pretty effective. But their overall goal to kind of create a unified democratic system that works is really bombing, and so it looks like we'll have a very dysfunctional government in the next time jump, unless people try to really change that with their points. This doesn't mean there won't be a crown, because that doesn't look like, from what I can see here, that's going to happen. It just means it's not going to be a very functional crown. Free Republics in general is kind of taking a nosedive, and they're not doing so great. So if you want the organization of all the different countries as one to be sort of still functional and sticking together, you may have to put a lot of points towards that, because we may end up with a lot of divisive different countries that just don't care about each other anymore, and a crown that can't wrangle them all and doesn't have any power. The Silver Service, which is sort of the group that protects a crown and protects the main nobles, also taken a big nosedive, really struggling in this time jump, maybe completely destroyed unless people put a lot of points into that direction. They seem to be taking a lot of heavy hits, both politically and militarily. Then we get to some more specific groups and effects. I'm going to start off by going with different countries, and then I'm going to go into different organizations. So starting off with just like Svodlin, they look like they're actually doing pretty well. They seem to have taken a very heavy military loss. They're having really heavy military losses, and that's because of Daggergrass mostly, which we'll see. But in terms of their function of being the weapons dealers for everybody else, that seems to be going really well. So They seem to be holding out, although it's costing them a lot. A lot of the Dagdian groups are really struggling. Apparently, there are conflicts between many of the different Dagdian organizations and the Dagdioth Pantheon, like all the Dagdian groups. They're sort of really struggling with keeping their religions intact and not allowing them to be overwhelmed by other religions. So that is sort of something they're struggling with. Maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing. Ilionos actually is doing pretty great. They seem to be, improving. They are struggling with being able to recruit mages and magic. They just seem to be having certain magical problems there, which is going to be something that if you want them to be able to functionally do, you can help them overcome that. Odolathan is having a great renaissance. It seems that Odolathan is really having a comeback. They have people that do a lot of work there in certain leagues, and they're really they seem to do really good so far. Geb too. Geb is actually really on the up and up. Geb is really, really proficient. Seems to be using its funds in all kinds of ways all over the place, and it's starting to have a big influence all across the ocean. It's kind of taking over the role that Pinnacle and Hastor used to play, and is becoming the major controller of most of the oceans, in along all that whole region there. So if you like that, then put more points behind that. If you don't like that, you can try to counter that. Andy and Ion too, really actually recovering. They seem to be pushing back the Dark City, which you'll hear more about that in a bit, and and seem to be really in a good recovery mode. They seem to be pretty strong. Stonehammer takes some heavy losses, it looks like, and they are really they're really struggling to keep their any political standing, any sort of cultural standing, but they do seem to have sort of distinguished themselves as a separate culture from Svodlin, and that's sort of one of their main goals, and that seems to have worked, but it's costing them greatly. They basically are in sort of major conflicts with Svodlin, it looks like, and Svodlin is not taking this well as they're trying to establish themselves more and more as an independent nation. Hastor is struggling. They really dealing with a dragon war they just finished. And there's a lot of they seem to have cost them a lot of energy. They are very, very low on resources, and they're having to really, really rebuild themselves. They do not have access to a large supply of moon opals that maybe they used to have, and so they're really now struggling. Amir, pretty much the same boat, really struggling as well. O'Reilly, pretty much the same. Blackspire is really actually in a rough situation this time. They are having a lot of problems with their culture, and militarily getting really losing a lot of their military structures. They just have a really rough set of years, and hopefully they can be helped to get through it by their new leader. More about that. Dylan's character ended up becoming chosen as the new leader of Blackspire, and he'll rule for the next 7 years. He will be, that's not as far though all the way through the time jump, but it'll be part of the time jump. So he'll be having to make a lot of decisions for time jump events. So hopefully that they recover and they don't just end up completely splintering into all their little tiny groups again. Ian Ion does fair. And Temnor, okay. They're kind of struggling in a few places. Magically, actually, they're actually struggling with their ability to maintain their magical proficiency, and not as considered to be as high powered as they used to be. Desnor, no surprises here. Really just getting beat up. I mean, the Shadowlands is taking them over almost completely. Their culture is coming apart. They have a horrific set of years, and probably won't survive the time jump unless people take some action. Desnor won't make it. Reedman seems to be pretty good, although they still can't. I mean, structurally they're holding on, but they just can't seem to break out into the larger stage, like to be considered a major player. They're still functionally there, but they just don't seem to be able to break through into having a bigger influence on the world. Soraconia seems to be maintaining their pacifism really well, but also struggling magically. Their magic seems to be weak, and they can't seem to do many of the things they used to be able to do, and they're not sure why. Grey Isles does okay. Their culture is developing, and they're continuing to maintain their non-divine sort of philosophies and their alliances. Naraheim, okay, kind of struggling, getting kind of beat up, but does have a bit more political influence than they used to have. The Dagged Main really took a hit from losing their main leader, Sasha, and is politically is kind of being pulled in a lot of different directions. They structurally should survive the time jump, but they may not have much of a political structure or organizational working political system if people don't take action on Dagged Main. Okay, so now I'm going to go into more like detail-y stuff. So Pinnacle, the school specifically, actually does have a kind of a big uptick in their magical abilities and their military. In fact, it looking like a Pinnacle school has a very strong and effective military, and that is somewhat of a magical military. Where they take the biggest hit is economically. They're just absolutely wrecked economically, and look like they're going to be very, very poor when it comes to any sort of financial support. Deparia, well, Deparia gets really kicked in the teeth during this time jump. They were already kind of on the down with the Civil War happening and two different factions fighting each other, and all the living Dapper saying, "We're getting out of here. We don't want to be here anymore. This is a lost cause. Psionics is here and it wrecks us." And the undead Dapper is saying, "No, we're gonna stay." And they just absolutely get wrecked during the time jump too, as far as I can tell. I mean, socially they're just toasted, and the first few years of the time jump are just absolutely horrific for them. So I don't see them surviving this at all. I mean, unless somebody tries to put a bunch of political points towards them for some reason. I don't know. I mean, it looks like they will probably be retreat off the map, and there will probably be factions of them, wandering around, but they won't be an organized nation, as far as I can tell, anyway. The Fragnalican effect of the daggers being able to change and being some of the tools of Fragnalican, that seems to be being maintained, although it is very costly. It seems that whenever people use the tools and try to use them, there's this large drain on resources in the area, and some people feel like it's actually draining energy out of the world in those areas, a lot of primal energy being used up, and so there's some concerns about how much using of these tools is affecting just primal magic in general. Stormwatcher Tower is kind of having a difficult couple of years, trying to protect itself. Nothing extremely major, but it's troubling. A lot of the bandit lands, some of them are shrinking as more nations pull in there. But others of them are becoming more almost like independent nations, where they're like maintaining themselves as like their own little organizations with leaders and things. So we might see little bandit groups popping up that actually call themselves their own groups and are almost like little private nations that don't associate with anybody else. The shamans, Blackspire shamans, and all the Blackspire clans seem to be doing really well, even though Blackspire is having a really rough time. So that's something that the leaders of Blackspire will have to lean on, is to make sure that they use those Blackspire elites, the shamans, and all the different prestiges to really solve the problems that are cropping up over this time jump. Dark Wilds is really struggling. They get really romped and get kind of like crushed. I don't know that their Dark Wilds will have much of it left if people don't take some action to try to save the Dark Wilds. Now, the Dark City is a really interesting story with this one. So, the Dark City, given the effect of the Golden Horse card, which if you don't know about that, watch my other videos. But the Golden Horse card does really affect the Dark City in a pretty major way, mostly with the Sired Buys. In fact, it really wrecks Sired Buys, so that whenever they die, they get exorcised and they're toasted. But it doesn't have the desired effect that we had kind of hoped it would have on the upper level vampires, apparently because Apostle uses a different method to get her vampires, rather than sort of forcing people to become members of her group. She actually creates and recruits from people who really, really want to be part of her group and really, really love her. And because of that, her top echelon individuals do not get exercised when they die. Also, they're hard to kill, so we don't know that they pull very often, so that also could be partially why. So the Dark City actually has a kind of strange mishmash of positives and negatives. It seems that structurally, like as an organization on the map, they kind of get toasted by several different effects. They have some rough situations. As an organization, they don't do really well. But as like a covert group that's sort of hidden in Rokron, that actually seems to be going very well. Something seems to have gone very well for them in terms of being able to stay as an undercover group, something that we can't get rid of, and they're successful in maintaining a hold on Rokron influence. This may have to do with alliances they have off the map, groups that are, somewhere else that are trying to influence them, or some sort of deal that they've made with groups that are off the map. So that's unfortunate. And if we want that to not be a really big win for them in that category, someone will have to put a lot of energy into stopping that from happening. Although it does look like as a marked thing on the map, they may be gone as a marked area on the map, which is why Andean Iron is doing so well. All right, so the interactions with dragons have shifted dramatically. Initially, as at the start of the time jump, things look really, really good. Like most interactions with dragons become completely different than they have been in the past. Dragons become almost completely disconnected from human and human, elven, dwarven, interactions. They seem to take a focus on completely on their own interests and do not take action on effects of anything in Rokron, at least for a period of time. But this effect seems to be almost to an extreme. It seems that even in situations where dragons would have perhaps in the past taken some action to give aid to someone who, like a city that's being destroyed, or some evil demons that are taking over in an area, dragons take no action against that either. And so this is sort of seems problematic to some people in the sense that they used to rely on some good dragons coming to their aid, or some helpful dragons that maybe they could ask for assistance. And it seems that something has shifted with dragons fairly dramatically, such that they take no action in when it comes to the affairs of mortals, if you want to call it that, and they only really interact when interacted with. And that means that, we cannot tell if someone is a good or evil dragon by any sort of interaction until one pokes it. And then once you prod the dragon, then you'll discover if it's an evil or good dragon and what it will do. And even then, it probably wouldn't assist you in any large way if it was a good dragon, and it would absolutely toast you if it was an evil one. So this is somewhat concerning, and if people want to work on that, they'd have to have a lot of influence on dragons and try to really get some information on why this is and what's going on there. This may have to do with, in my plot videos, something that changed about dragons in the big dragon camp that we did. So maybe that has to do with that, but we're not sure. Okay, so the bone marks get really wrecked in this time jump too. The bone marks were really trying to hold out against Daggedrask and Shiggoth, and they kind of don't really. They kind of just get really hammered. They kind of managed to keep their political structure, and magically and culturally they are sort of holding on. But as a government, a country rather, they just really getting hammered. So they're probably going to be quite small on the map if they're holding out at all up there. Priests of Shiggoth, on the other hand, are doing great. They seem to have a big upsurge in their magical power, their influence of magic, how much magic they can use, and they seem to be expanding rapidly. So I expected there to be a lot of Shiggoth influence in the coming season. And if you don't like that, you'd better put a lot of points towards it, because Shiggoth is on the rise for sure. The Infernals do okay, although they're really struggling in two major areas. Their magic is functionally not working as well as it should. They usually seem to have expended a lot of their magical resources. And their military is also really struggling. These are kind of the two main areas the Infernals rely on to actually functionally survive. So they're really struggling in those two areas, and that's probably going to cost them. I expect them to shrink quite a bit just because of that problem. And if you want that to be more, then you should put a lot of points towards trying to really shrink the Infernals. The Angelics kind of have a similar problem. They do pretty well, but their problem mostly has to do with their interaction and ability to maintain their supply of good, usable magical items. And this seems to be a problem for them. They can't seem to keep enough resources on hand, so they're struggling mostly in resources and magic item situation. So if you want to change that, you need to push a lot of magic items their way, because that's what they really need to deal with the situations they're in. Priestess of the Goddess seem to do pretty great, at least in terms of like overall running into the years seem to be influencing them where they have a strong political group, but they seem to be having sort of a problem with their overall like how they're interacting all around as an organization. Like politically, they have a lot of influence, and that's actually causing maybe problems for them in overall, because rather than being a group that is just benefiting non-males and helping women and non-males across the globe, there seems to be kind of more and more of an influence of kind of a power-hungry, we are powerful and we know it kind of attitude that is becoming more pervasive, and this interest in having political power is sort of taking over, and that's kind of problematic for them. So it's kind of they do well and they're becoming powerful, but who they are is kind of shifting, and that's causing some people some concern. The Fae seem to do okay, although they're struggling in a few places of being able to be where they want to be. They don't seem to be able to maintain groves in places they used to maintain. The Protectorate really gets hit pretty hard here too, and economically really is struggling up there in the north. Now, opposite to the Priestesses of the Elder Goddess is Ladies of the Night Watch. They seem to be doing the almost the exact opposite. Tremendous success. They become a group that is now they have groups and branches in other cities, and Emir is just their main base. Probably going to be able to train Ladies of the Night Watch in multiple cities in the future, and they're becoming like an elite police force that has branches all over. The totem animal effect. If you don't know what that is, look at my other videos that I just posted. Totem animal effect seems to be struggling to be kept and not get it out of control. It seems to be people are sometimes abusing it, trying to like force animals to be made into items and things, and that's not really going really well. But the overall look of it is that a lot of the animals do want to be made into items. That seems to be going really well, and they do want to help in wars and combats and basically help the people of Rhodocron to win militarily. So it does seem like they want to be weapons and shields and things like that. It's just that people aren't asking them appropriately or doing it the right way, and so it's causing this conflict, which could rekindle the uprising of the Enchanted. So that's a problem, but they want to be helpful, but they're just not being let to be helpful. So if you want to influence that, then try to put a lot of points towards that. Stonehammer does really great here too. At least Stonehammer's troops, they seem to be doing really well, even though they take a big beating. Like I said earlier, the troops themselves, the actual classes, seem to be really solidly holding on. Same with Svolden troops. Svolden troops seem to be doing really well. They're taking a big military beating, but they seem to improve in their skill because of it. Axioms kind of is really taking a rough hit, but it's always hard to tell with Axioms because maybe that's just because they're switching sides. Like, we don't know. Ian Ion does fairly well, except that there's a lot of like cultural infighting and council members who are kind of taking hot shots at each other and fighting with each other and not really getting along, and that's not really great for politics all around. So coming up to the end here, some big plot announcement things. As far as we know, like I said, the vampires seem to be doing a pretty well in terms of like disappearing. One of the most concerning things, though, is Atone. Atone is definitely one of the biggest problems. He seems to be doing really well initially, and see but mostly most worrisome is that he seems to have unlocked his weapon, which apparently it wasn't that he just used a broadsword to make a point. It seemed like he was like basically training to upgrade his sword, and he had to do only broadsword stuff for like a long period of time in order to like upgrade it. And so Atone now seemed to has had complete success there, and that's really bad. In terms of his like influence with the people and stuff, he's also doing pretty well. And so this is a big problem. If people don't want this to be the case, you're gonna have to really solve this. It looks like Atone has sort of unlocked a like unpreventable type of weapon, like maybe like an Agantine or possibly Morganti like type of effect. We're not really sure how this works exactly. It seems like it has modes, or it's more like a blessing type effect. It may be that the weapon, was always a Morganti. It's like a blessed weapon, a Morganti weapon that he has, but it functionally in this phase is normal, and now he's like unlocked the Morganti part of it. It's not really clear, but that's really not a good thing, because already fighting Atone was horrific. Fighting with a Morganti weapon is just nonsense and pretty awful. But looks like that's the case. If you want to try to downgrade his weapon, you're going to have to put a lot of points against Atone. And very likely you'll be fighting him with a Morganti broadsword for a lot of the time jump battles, and then maybe it'll downgrade because you'll be able to depower it, because apparently it ranks up. Some good influence is that like worshippers of Talos seem to be doing really well. The Talos religion and the angel Talos that used to be a vampire, that seems really well in terms of her influence in the world. Although her ability to like help out militarily or to make magical items or anything like that is really nerfed in a large way, so doesn't have a lot of influence. I think most notable is the Wildwood change effects, Wildwood expansion, all that. Wildwood actually has taken a major change. This happens almost immediately in the time jumps, like within the first year. But the Wildwood the forests are not spreading anymore. They don't seem to be going anywhere else. And as far as we can tell, you cannot travel through the Wildwood to any other forest across the map. That ability seems to have ended with some sort of change in the world that has made me a major change that happened. You look at my other videos to know what that might be about. But there is no ability to Wildwood track through the Wildwood anymore. There's some theory that like it's like completely gone, like there might be some sort of way to trigger it, but what that way is not common knowledge yet. So if at the end of the time jump people learn what it is through time jump events and battle stuff, then I'll post it. But if nobody knows, it'll remain a secret. But currently you should not assume that you can Wildwood track anywhere anymore. The only actual Wildwood at this point is the actual Wildwood marked on the map, which is the Aeon Ion. All of the forests are forests at this point, and not Wildwood at all. And they all have different types of animals and creatures that are now endemic to those particular forests, which is a whole new place to explore. Other things like the infernal leaders like Sir Carver de Maeve, and Eberquari von Squee, they seem to be taking a pretty big hit in terms of combats and battles, but they don't go away. They seem to remain. Uberton Duo seems to be still very present, but he still seems to be acting in a very like sort of odd way, separate from the other two. Uberton Duo does seem to be taking like a gaining in power. If anything, he's becoming like the main prime leader, and the other two kind of almost forgotten. His influence of magic seems to be spreading to far beyond the reaches of the infernal area. He seems to be able to control magic in many areas. It looks like if people don't take any action against or to change Uberton Duo's trend, you're going to end up with a kind of a Raskuru type effect. If you don't know what that is, it's an old effect. The Riskuru was like a demon's spell that basically whenever you tried to cast Elder Sorcery, you usually just died. That's the kind of thing that will probably be affecting most of Roakron, in that Duverton Duo may become the Riskuru type effect if nobody takes any actions here, because his influence is very, very strong, and we might not be able to use Elder Sorcery at all, actually, if somebody doesn't take some action against that. So that leaves us with, Shiggoth. I already mentioned Shiggoth, but Shiggoth specifically is theorized that Shiggoth actually has a huge uptick in power. She's becoming very, very influential, feeding off of magic all around her. There's more instances of actually running into her specifically, a bit more like we run into Atone, or we used to run into Kagall. Now there are interactions of running into Shiggoth in person, and she does seem to have a sort of a deity-like effect where she can appear and then fight things and then vanish. Very, very hard to deal any damage to in the first place. Seems to be hunting down individuals to murder and then to claim power over magic. Does seem to sort of have kind of a beef with the Infernals though, which is kind of, we don't know where that comes from, but like she does seem to sort of have a beef with the Infernals, and that seems to be kind of at least good for now, because she isn't just making common cause with them, which sort of puts her on a spectrum of Shiggoth on one side, the Dagged-Rask in the middle, and then Infernals on the other, and with as far as allegiances go, Dagged-Rask are allied with the Infernals, and Dagged-Rask are sort of allied with Shiggoth, but Shiggoth's not allied with Infernals, and so it puts them on sort of this odd spectrum. The Nightmares plot. This seems to be really taking a rough turn at the beginning, but there's some potential to actually maybe resolve many of the nightmares that we've been dealing with that are connected to all the Wildwood Orphans. But it looks like there needs to be some action taken. So this is more of a spiky sort of situation where it's really hard to deal with, but if we can deal with it, there should be really big changes if we can solve all the nightmares. That'd be really cool. The Morganti cleanup situation. A lot of Morganti being taken out of the world. This happens in two different ways. One is a lot of people are just sort of hoarding it. If they have Morganti, they're sort of hiding it away and putting it in places that they can't be found because they understand now it can't be made again, and its prices have gone through the roof. The value of any Morganti weapon has become extreme. Any Morganti items in the possession of any character would be confiscated at this point. All Morganti would be taken. So if any character has any Morganti for any reason, you'll need to take that off your character sheet. But do tell me that you had it, so that you find out who it is who took it and why and where it might be and etc. But for some of you, it will be taken by your organization because they are now only going to use it, and they will not leave it with you ever. If you're a different type of organization, you've had it for some other reason, they may take it to destroy it. I mean, it really just depends. But if you have any character who has any type of Morganti whatsoever, assume that it is gone and you could not have it. A lot of it is removed. You're going to see a lot less Morganti just showing up at all, because even using one in a battle is like taking out some item like that's worth like 100,000 gold to like maybe try to fight with it and then hope that it doesn't get destroyed and unmade right there. Like, people aren't going to take the risk. So I expect a season where we won't run into Morganti very much. But what's happened is that because of that, people have started to research and create alternate forms of permanent damage. So you're seeing an uptick in things like Agantine, which is a blessing type effect, which we solved years ago relating to a haunt, the Agantine haunt, and that was related to effects that had to do with death and like a particular haunt that people researched. And so we know that the Agantine effect is sort of linked to basically a tormented spirit that has to do with interactions with death. And so that effect might be something that that we have solved before and could solve again. And how people are triggering it may be something we already know, which is basically a bit like the way that people create, like some of the theories around the way people create death knights or other things where they have to create sort of like a haunt interaction that allows something to trigger. And that's sort of unfortunate that people can do that, but maybe the cost of being able to remove Morgante from the world. Overall, there's a really rough section of the time jump, which is sort of in the middle. So the middle seems to be just overall the really hard part. And so I expect encounters towards the middle of our time jumps, or sort of like, I guess, in 2 weeks or so, to be really hard and a rough climb. But not necessarily horrific. Overall, Electrobosium seems to be doing okay, although there are reports that she's having a hard time with being able to keep her awareness of events that are happening all over. She used to be the person people go to for like secret knowledge, and it seems like there may have been some hidden flaws that she took from the box of 1,000 things that she didn't tell people about that are now coming up over these years of time where she can no longer do certain things that she used to be able to do. The overall influence of, like I said, of Rokron in general is, like I said, politically kind of coming apart. Economically, okay, actually. So the economics of next season, we probably won't see like really, really low ATs, and we probably won't see like, the access to funds like mission gold being really, really low. But culturally, there's a lot of tension. It looks like unless people put a lot of influence into keeping the culture of Rokron together, we might see a lot of like speciesist behavior, a lot of isolationist behavior. But militarily, Rokron is strong and is able to keep other countries from invading them, and like able to keep Dagdiath Rask and other Dagdiath associated groups from invading. Let's see what's left. Shadowlands. The Shadowlands, like I said, did really, really well, and their influence over all of their effects is really super strong. Like, it looks like all of Desnor will be full Shadowlands, not just one effect or something like that. Terrifying effect down there. So if you want to change that, we're going to need to do a lot of work there. Okay, so wrapping up, we have like dragons, like I said, doing really well at the beginning. We have a really good interaction with them at first, and then something sort of seems to shift in a way where they become sort of completely uninteractive. Like there's some sort of complete disconnect. There is a sort of, like I said, in the middle period, there's sort of a concern about an event that might happen that has the potential to break the agreements that people have made about Morgante spirits being unable to come back into the world. So we'll be running an event where that particular pact gets challenged, and people will have to protect that event from happening. If you can't make it to that event, just say that I am putting my points towards making sure we do not break the pact with death about the Morgante spirits being able to enter this world, because something happens towards the middle of the time jump that could break that and ruin that work. There are some developments in the Western Isles a little bit. There's some like a lot of like wars happening there with groups that are sort of sailing with the Rising Star groups. Interesting developments with in the Polar North. Actually, the Polar North seems to be having some really interesting developments and new groups going up there and colonizing areas and attacking kind of Dagdrass from the north. So kind of maybe an interesting dynamic of Kamenlock trying to break free, and other Griskel dwarves and people trying to come in on the north, and maybe kind of trying to establish a more free nation up there, not so isolated from Rokron, maybe becoming another member of Crown. That's kind of a really, really interesting development. In terms of individuals, Embarcarius seems to not die. Melissa seems to there's like some influence, some interactions where people feel like they have had like some oracle like visions where they sort of maybe have encounters with Melissa the Scald, which is kind of interesting. As far as we understand, she's sort of in this space where she can't return from. She's sort of like trapped, and we know success in actually like maybe interacting with that, but they have had some interactions with her, like had some connections, which is maybe promising. Katie Moonswain, there's an attack on Katie Moonswain. She might get killed. If you want to try to stop that, put points towards protecting her. Byron, probably PDs. Byron 10, actually. It looks like somebody is, in the first part of the time jump, somebody is definitely out to kill him permanently. This may have to do with the Morganti changes and all the spirit effects, and maybe why these agreements with the effects are so the agreement with the Morganti is the way it is. So if you want him not to get absolutely toasted, try to be at an event so you can be in a mission, on the mission where he gets assassinated or attempted to be assassinated, and try to stop that from happening, and or put a lot of points towards that. Sen, he seems to do fine. He dodges most of the effects. Recrosi Centris actually probably gets toasted, at least maybe not permanently, but definitely somebody is out to kill her for various reasons we don't know. If you don't want that to happen, take some influence if you can. Silverdeer, she's the innkeeper, was in Blackspire this year. She also gets killed. Maybe not permanently, but potentially permanently. So if you want to try to protect Silverdeer, put points towards that. Dasari Kama, she seems to do pretty well, although is struggling a bit, but seems to become a more major political figure in the regions when she retires. Kaya Gothang actually seems to have a major breakthrough with the Sorceress of the Elder Goddess in like creating a new level of power with the sorceresses, but then someone tries to permanently kill her almost immediately after that. So huge breakthrough, but maybe she has no ability to follow through on it. So if you want to try to save Kaya, put points towards that. The Soraconian Martial Masters, they seem all to survive. At least no permanent deaths done with them. But Laura Whitelocks actually looks like she's going to get definitely killed once or twice, and may have to pull for those deaths, or might get permanently killed if nobody puts points towards that. But it does seem to be on the verge of some major breakthrough as well in terms of her magical abilities and her ability to influence the world. So if she does survive, major upgrade. Milton gets killed unless people want to put some points towards this. We assume this has to do with people who have connections with the Dark City and vampires, since that's his main thing he protects against, and he's the security for Pinnacle. Sigismund gets absolutely toasted. As far as I can tell, like multiple permanent death attempts. So if Sigismund's going to survive, somebody's got to put a lot of points towards this, because this is pretty rough. A go of permanent attacks, or attacks towards permanent death. Some of them may be coming from within. Eteri Odril, he's like the leader of of Crown's Temnorian branch. Looks like something tries to permanently kill him as well. It's not sure whether I'm not sure whether they succeed, but if you don't want him to get killed, put some points towards that. I think I forgot to mention Garandel. Garandel actually does okay. They seem to be, managing, no major huge influences there, and so I just wanted to throw that in there. Gwithlir seems to be all right, but the Shaman Council of Blackspire seems to take major attacks, and many of them may get killed unless somebody puts some points in there. The new Dark Spikes, they seem to be, progressing, although they're having struggles with being able to actually use their magic to control demons or affect demons like they want to. That doesn't seem to be working the way they want. The Council of Ian Ion, like Dillian Plamic, Sparian Yemten. Sparian looks like he's going to get killed unless somebody can take some actions on that. Colin Mercy is fine, but Tracy Oleania probably gets killed here too, and we'll probably have to pull for that. Graylia Polian killed multiple times, unless someone tries to stop that. And then I think that's about it. Daggett Rask overall seems to be taking a lot of hits from somewhere, but we don't know where they're taking those hits from. So somebody's trying to basically keep them in check, apparently. And the Crusaders of Atone look like they're getting upgraded, so not so great. All right, that's it. So hopefully this was informative. You have all the information you need to make your choices, and I'll see some of you tomorrow at the first time jump event, and the rest of you I'll see later in the week. All right, have a good one. Bye.